Sir, I also stand to join in the love fest for the fine member Dr Cam Calder in this piece of legislation. And while there's been a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, I think on one previous debate we were actually talking about Ian Les Galloway's playing with his pussy in his living room with his laser light or something of that nature. Yeah, indeed, there's a high possibility. And there has been an element of joviality, I guess, sir, but in all seriousness, this bill actually deals with what potentially is a fatal act. And indeed we have seen in overseas and warring nations where high-powered lasers have actually been used in efforts to take down enemy aircraft or allied aircraft. And sir, while we do see them obviously here in the New Zealand domestic setting, it is actually a fact to say that lasers, handheld lasers, particularly high-powered ones, are used as a weapon of war. So what we're actually dealing with here, putting all jokes aside, sir, is a very serious piece of legislation that I know Dr Calder has worked very, very hard to actually try and ascertain exactly where this piece of legislation should land in terms of the nature of the possession of them, and this is very much talking about the preventative end of the spectrum rather than a punitive one after the act, if you like, sir, and also what would constitute a laser light sufficient to cause the distraction to a pilot or blind a pilot or a vehicle user. And I know Dr Calder did have some reservations about the idea of consigning it only to high-powered. That said, sir, the officials made very good points as to why that should be the case. But it's interesting when we reflect on something such as possession of a knife, which in itself may not constitute an offence, but in given circumstances obviously it can do. But we don't actually sort of measure the length of a knife in terms of whether or not that would constitute being a dangerous offence. And I guess Dr Calder rightly pointed out that we're into that same territory when we talk about a laser. But I think the officials, and on balance, I think we've landed in a good space on this bill, and I think it's testament to the select committee process that we're able to sort of work through this so that the bill actually achieves what it's intended to do. And that is not to send shivers down the spines of university lecturers around the country who have a handheld laser in their pocket on their way to lecture the fine citizens of New Zealand, but for those who would have a high-powered laser in their possession and potentially use those in a malicious and dangerous manner, sir. So in that regard, I think the legislation has achieved its purpose. And like so many things in life, sir, I think it's the little things that get you, and not you so much, sir, but the public. And this is one of those things. A little thing can have a marked and significant impact and, in fact, cause the loss of life. And while I don't believe that every pilot in New Zealand is sitting around watching this particular piece of legislation in its passage through the House, I know that they will certainly be grateful of the work of Dr Cam Calder, and I think it's a very tidy, constructive piece of legislation. I've enjoyed working with members from across the House and actually doing something that, while we can trifle about it in some small shape or form, actually is a significant and important change, and I think it has the potential to save lives. Simple as that, sir. Very happy to commend the work of Dr Calder, Select Committee, and this bill to the House.
Richard Prosser.
Mr Speaker, I'm pleased to rise on behalf of New Zealand First to speak to the Summary Offences Possession of Handheld Lasers Amendment Bill. New Zealand First supports this bill. We are happy